Hey, this is Tommy with Veteran Vapor. You can find us online at veteran-vapor.com. I'm going to be explaining how to build your own coils today the same way that I learned how to build my first coil. Everybody knows there's about a million different ways to make coils, so I'm going to explain it the way that I learned and the way that worked for me. There's a couple different items you're going to need, obviously, when you're making a coil. The first thing is the rebuildable atomizer. I'm going to be using a Trident V2. You'll need a mod to fire it with. I'm going to be using a Panzer Blackhawk clone by Pro. You can find both of these on our website, along with Canthol. This is Vapo Wire, and the liquid I'm going to be using is Mr. White's Vapors. The flavor is creme brulee. It's in 6 milligrams of nicotine. That's another important part. Whenever it comes to dripping or using rebuildables, always go down in your nicotine level. I went from a 12 to a 6, just so I didn't make myself sick. So keep that in mind. A couple other tools is a screwdriver set. Organic cotton balls is what I use. Some people use silica. I use the organic cotton balls. Make sure they're non-bleached. And I'm going to be using a 14 gauge blunt tip syringe to wrap the coils on. And fingernail clippers are really handy to have to clip the wire. So with all that being said, let's get started. Okay, there's a couple things I need to cover first. So the first thing is, this is the Trident V2. So it's going to be a dual coil setup. I'm shooting for a 0.6 ohm total coils. So I'll be using 28 gauge Vapo wire. And like I said before, this is a 14 gauge blunt tip syringe. This one's purple. This is how I can tell what it is. So I plan on doing 6 wraps around this to get to about 0.6 ohms. Another thing to keep in mind is even if you don't get exactly what you're shooting for, as long as you get in the ballpark and you have a good coil, then it'll still turn out to be just fine. If you're building it on your mod, which most people do because it's most convenient, either take your battery out if you're worried about it firing, or you can leave it on, but make sure you have your locking ring set so it doesn't fire while you're building on it. Alright, so this is the way that I do it. I leave it on the spool, and I don't try to make a perfect coil on there, but the key is to wrap it around the syringe. You hold one end with your thumb, and you just get really tight wraps. And they don't have to be close together. Most people say make them close together. As long as they're tight, it'll be fine. So I just did 6 wraps right there, so that's it. So then I'll hold this with my other hand so it doesn't come apart like a slinky. So there you go. So then this is what I'm left with right here. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's just a mess of a coil spread across the whole thing. The advantage of using a blunt tip syringe over something like a nail, a finishing nail or a screwdriver bit, is as long as these are tight, you can just mash this together. And as long as you're holding this lead on the end, they won't overlap each other. And that's the key. As long as you don't get the coils to overlap each other, you'll end up with a good coil. So you'll end up with one going over the top and one going from behind. And then the coils will be all next to each other, nice and neat in a line. So another thing people do is, this is the part where they'll get them with tweezers and then heat the thing up. You can do that, but you don't have to. If you have a torch, you can get them, the closer you get them together, the better. But if you're just starting out, you don't want to have to deal with all that, so you don't have to. So as soon as you get this coil made just right, and assuming you don't have a torch, I do, but for this purpose, I'm not going to do a torch, just because you don't have to. So then you put one, and you leave one lead longer than the other, so you can guide it in there, so you're not trying to fight it, having them both the same length. So once it's in there, the trick is to not make it touch the bottom. So you can adjust it once you make your other coil. So this is a dual coil setup. I'm going to make another one, then I'll mess with it all at the same time. If you have a single coil setup, this would be it. Then all you got to do is tighten it down, make sure the coil's not touching the bottom or any of the metal around it, and put a little cloud of cotton underneath. I'm going to make the other coil here real quick, the exact same way I did last time. Alright, so now that I got the second coil built, obviously I'm just going to put it on the opposite side, and one of the leads shares the middle post. So one lead will have its own post, the other one will be in the middle. Alright, now I got both my coils in there, so all I'm going to do is get them about where they're supposed to be, which is a little bit inside of the liquid well. Make sure you have it far enough forward to where when you put the cover on, they won't ground out on the cover. and you just tighten down the leads and you snip them off. Another thing I'll always do is tighten down the outside posts first and then tighten down the middle once you have those where they need to be. So once you got them all about right, that's when you take the leads and you clip off all the excess. This is where fingernail clippers come in handy. You don't have to clip it all the way down to the post because you can just bend up the excess up next to the post. Now that all the leads are clipped off, it's all ready to go. This is where you get your battery ready to fire the coils. Since you didn't heat the coils up while we were making them, this is where you can heat them up now and kind of form them to where they need to be. Before you even think about firing the mod to fire the coils, you need to make sure nothing is touching metal. So just look through it and pull everything up away from any metal. Now that this is ready, I got a battery in it so I can fire it and see it smoke a little bit. And now this is where you watch to see how even the coils heat up. So I'll heat it up just a little bit, and then I'll give the coils a little squeeze with the pliers, I'll heat it up again. And one of them is obviously heating up faster than the other, so one of them needs work. So all I'm doing here is trying to squeeze the coil together to make sure none of them are overlapping and trying to make the wires closer together. So once they're glowing red hot, that's the best time to try to squeeze them together. So now, here you can see they're both heating up pretty much at the same time. So that's it with the coils. So now you're ready for the cotton. So I just take a little bit of cotton, and these are, like I said, organic, non-bleached cotton balls. Take a little bit of cotton, and you just roll it up. And you just make a tiny little cloud, and you can put the cloud right underneath the coil. And this is where you can use a little tool, such as a syringe, to help you out to get it all under there. The goal is not to make this too tight, because the cotton will expand when it gets liquid on it. But you want just enough to hold the liquid in so that you don't have to drip on it as often. So see, you can see this is just a tiny little piece compared to the mod itself. After you roll it up, you can cut off the excess. And I don't put the cotton through the coil itself, I put it underneath. Once you get it set, you just clip off the excess. I can use the fingernail clippers I used earlier. Now is the part where you add the liquid. And this is where I said I use Mr. White's Vapor. This is creme brulee and 6 milligrams of nicotine. And all you gotta do is put a light little coat over the top of it just to get all the cotton nice and moist. And then you can fire it just a little bit, make sure it's still working. And while you have this thin layer, this is where you can shape it to make sure you don't have any hanging over the edge or anything like that. And you'll see how the cotton itself expands. And that's it, that's how you build a coil. And so now the other trick is when you have your cap, make sure your air holes, if you're using a dual air hole cap, that the air holes line up with the coils. So once you put the cap on, you should have the air holes right in line with the coil. So here I'll take a little puff puff so you can see the finishing product. So obviously you're not going to blow clouds or win any cloud contest, but you're still just starting out, so that's not really the goal here. This is going to get you a good functional coil and a good place to start. That's all we're looking for. So thanks for watching, and remember to visit us at our website at veteran-vapor.com to join the lifestyle.